99X. It's the Morning X. Barnes and Leslie. Fram, you want to get into some really spooky stuff?
I'm ready for spooky.
I have lived in Atlanta since 1992. And never in my years of living here have I heard about this.
Lake Lanier is the largest lake in Georgia. It's a man-made lake meant to provide water and power to the surrounding communities. They actually made it by flooding a valley that had a town in it, Oscarville. So they had to relocate the people that lived there, and then they just drowned the entire town under water.
When they built the lake, they left tons of structure in the water. We've got concrete, roads, bridges. We've got a racetrack under there. We've got standing timber that stands as high as 40, 60, 70 feet from the bottom.
There seems to be a great deal of debris in the water, so it's not an ideal place for people to be swimming or boating or jet skiing or partying. The fact is, it's a dangerous place.
Mind blown.
What?
I have so many questions, and good thing we have Lisa M. Russell on, who is a writer, a writing instructor, an academic assistant dean. She authors microhistory books about lost things, and one of those books is Underwater Ghost Towns of North Georgia, which focuses on the creation of Lake Lanier. So many questions. Hey, good morning, Lisa.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I don't know how.
This is I lived there for 17 years and never heard about this.
Are we just out of the loop? Because we did a radio show for a lot of years. This never came up, ever.
I don't think people talked about it a lot, not because they're trying to hide anything. It's just, it really, until I started doing the research and talking to different people, I didn't know how they did it, how they formed the lakes. And just by the way, I wrote about all the North Georgia lakes, and there's almost every one of them were formed almost exactly the same way as Lake Lanier. But for some reason, Lake Lanier gets a lot of press.
So, how, when, and why was Lake Lanier created? When did this all happen?
There's an area, time period that I call the dam era, excuse me. And it started like in the turn of the century. They needed electricity in North Georgia. I mean, 14, whatever. They didn't have electricity in North Georgia. So they started with like Blue Ridge. Have you ever been to Lake Blue Ridge? It's my favorite of the lakes. It's beautiful. It's remote.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
But that was one of the earliest dams, hydroelectric dam, because they didn't have electricity, okay? That was the main reason they started all this. Also, places like Rome, Georgia flood really bad because of the river. So these creation of these lakes by damming up the rivers, actually the reservoirs, by creating those, it stops the flood waters. It keeps them from flooding. The other reason was navigation, which I never have totally understood, except for before the lakes, they had rivers that they would navigate. So those are the reasons they started. That was in the early 1900s. But then in 1940, after the war, they started thinking, before the war, World War II, they started thinking about the area up in near near Gainesville, and it has 3 counties: Forsyth, Hall. Anyways, they started thinking about using it for water, because Atlanta was growing and they needed water. So of all the lakes, Lake Lanier got the most attention that I've ever seen after doing all this research. And the reason is they started this after the war. They said, okay, we're going to build it. We're going to flood these. By the way, I'll go back to that in a minute. We're going to flood these areas, and we're going to create hydroelectric power, also water. They never had the intention of being recreational. That was never but that happened. That was kind of an afterthought. So they really started them for those 3 reasons. And then Atlanta needed water, so they started the water thing. But like I said, it was like when they started Lake Lanier, oh my goodness, they had like I call it a dog and pony political show. They had the governor and all the senators, and they were taking a bucket of water from one side and pouring it to the other. They were making a big thing about it, how politicians do. So that's Lake Lanier is the only lake that I studied that got that much attention.
Wow.
That's incredible. Tell us about Oscarville and then all these other towns that were submerged.
It just goes away. Mind blown.
So it is weird, but you got to remember, put your mind back in that time period. there weren't towns, and everybody says towns, and I've just been looking online, and there's this new movie coming out about Lanier, and they're calling Oscarville a town. Oscarville was not a town; it was a community. Y'all know how Georgia is. They have incorporated towns, and then they have unincorporated communities. And it was an unincorporated community. It was a farmland, generational farmland. And if you want to know the curse of the bad things that happened, is people lost their farmlands that were in their families for generations. So Oscarville was a community. It wasn't incorporated. And so I'm not to put a fine point on it, but I hear that all the time, and I wanted to make sure that people understand that it was a farm area at the time that they flooded. Nobody was run out. They were given, 700 families had to move, and they were given cheap prices. I mean, the very first guy that, and by the way, these are all in the newspaper.
How cheap? What did they offer?
Let me tell you the price. They got Shadburn, Henry Shadburn, been on the property for 100 years. His family had been on there hundreds of years. And when they came in, and basically they had to sell. They didn't have any choice, They paid him $4,100 for 100 acres of land in 1954, which when I wrote the book, which was a few years ago, it was $36,000 in our time.
So if you dove into the lake, how far down would you have to go to find any of these structures?
I don't think it's like right on the surface, but they really, that's, but like comparative, like Carter's Lake is like 400 feet deep. Okay. Lanier is not that deep, so it's not that far down. I don't know exactly the number. I'm not a diver. I've talked to a lot of divers, and they do say that Lake Lanier is really different from most areas. I don't know. They don't know why, and it has a different feel to it. But here's one thing: when they created all the other lakes, especially Lake Blue Ridge, they cut down all the trees, got rid of all the stuff, the houses and stuff, the buildings, but they left them. They just left them for Lake Lanier. For some reason, they left them. They didn't move any. In fact, on Friday nights, they say that people in Forsyth County would stand on a bridge and watch the water rise and stuff swirling around, junk and stuff.
Ooh.
We are talking to Lisa Russell. She is an expert on underwater ghost towns all over North Georgia, and a lot of this is that I've seen pop up lately is about Lake Lanier, which just blows me away still.
Yeah, Barnes, it's kind of reminding me of Outer Banks. Maybe there's treasure underneath there we could call John B. What do you think? Like, what is there that we could discover?
Oh, there's graves under there. There's Native American burial grounds that were excavated. There's probably junk and a lot of fishing line.
Okay, on that topic, let's listen to this clip, and I'd like you to speak on this because this is spooky, and you start getting all these people talking about rumors and about ghosts and stuff. Listen to this clip.
But researchers studying the lake believe this is only part of the story, and that the source of the dark force drawing people down into its murky depths is a Native American burial ground that was submerged by the lake's construction.
Back in 2007, there was a drought, and the water went way low. And because of that, they found an area called the Samore Mountains, Indian Mountains. It's considered a sacred area that belonged to the Native Americans. The Creeks and the Cherokees. Lake Lanier was built by the Army Corps of Engineers. And according to the Army Corps of Engineers, they removed all the bodies while they were creating Lake Lanier. But back when they were building these lakes, they didn't have ground-penetrating equipment. So there's a great likelihood that there are bodies of the Native Americans under the waters of Lake Lanier.
By the way, that's you, right, on this TV show?
When I had a cold, they said, "Oh, it's okay."
So have bodies floated to the surface?
No. Did I say that?
No, I'm asking you how.
No bodies, no nothing. Because, they're probably decomposed. So they're probably at the bottom of the, I'm not an expert.
Well, but people could still find something.
They probably could. In the National Archives, there was a map, and I thought I scanned it to put it in my book, but I didn't. They have a map where they were looking for graves, and I don't know how they would do it without grave, because a lot of them didn't have markers, including slave graves, the enslaved people. They didn't have markers, so how would they know where the bodies were? You know what I'm saying? And they didn't have ground penetrating, like we do now. So they did the best they could. They had like I said, they had a picture in the National Archives of all these crosses they put here and there where they thought there might have been graves. And what they did was when they got permission of the family, if they could find the family, they would move the graves to a higher place. But you think about all the people that have died. And again, this was a generational farm area. It wasn't cities where people, North Georgia is very rural,
Where can people learn about this, Lisa? Do you have a website, a book? How can we find out about this?
Book, right?
Yeah, I have several things. I have a Substack called Elegies of Lost Things. I also have a YouTube.
Okay.
And then my website is lisamrussell.net. And I write several things about lost things and all the lakes because it's a really fascinating story. Now when I drive by a lake, because I live near Lake Altoona, when I drive by a lake, and I don't even go up to Lanier except for when I'm going to speak or something, I just look at it and I go, I don't look at it the same anymore. I
bet.
Yeah. How could you?
First of all, it's a mud hole.
Yeah.
It's not even a natural thing. It's created by man. And it's just not,
That's fascinating.
Wild story.
Fascinating.
Thank you for sharing. If people want to
Thank you.
dive in more, well, I shouldn't say it that way. If people want to get into it more, you can check out the book. And what's the name of the book?
Underwater Ghost Towns of North Georgia.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
The Morning X with Barnes and Leslie.
99X, The Morning X. Barnes, Leslie, Fram, you ready to get into some true crime?
I love true crime.
I love true crime. I don't like victims of true crime, but without, you have to have victims to have true crime. Fortunately, in the story we're about to dive into, this person has worked hard on recovery and coming back from this and chronicling what happened. And it was a huge podcast. First, I want to play a clip. This was from 11 Alive. This will set up the story. This is the story we're talking about. The podcast is called Betrayal. And here is the story.
Information this morning about a Cobb County teacher in jail charged with sexually assaulting a student. Spencer Herron was arrested Friday at his home in Ackworth. We've learned his arrest stems from an alleged 3-year sexual relationship with a 16-year-old female student. Investigators say the teen says it started back in 2016 when he allegedly groped her. It all happened on Kell High School property. The school's website lists the 48-year-old as the head of the career tech department and a coach. Herron is currently in the Cobb County Jail on a $55,000 bond.
Please welcome Jennifer Faison, who is the former wife of the person who did these evil things. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello. Hi.
Good morning.
I feel weird playing that clip because I don't want to trigger you into a bad space, but I kind of need to.
Yeah, it's hard to hear, honestly, even after all this time. It's been about 5 years, and that was really interesting to hear that again.
You haven't heard that in 5 years?
No, it's just I haven't heard it in a year.
Okay, make me feel bad, Jennifer.
Sorry.
I mean this
make me feel bad.
I know. This is the story. So, that's why you're here. That's why it's going to become a TV show on Hulu.
That's right.
So can you take us back to the beginning? Because obviously this is about your former husband, which you thought you had a fairy tale marriage. Tell us, go back to the beginning of how long were you married before you even found out any of this was happening?
We were married 7 years. We had dated, though, in college, and we're college sweethearts. We went our separate ways. We re-met in the most magical way, literally 20 years later in New York City, and then we were married a year later. So,
wow.
Yeah, we were together, married 7 years, though, before I found out about everything.
It's just vile. I listened to the podcast before I have a connection between me and this story that led me to Jennifer, because it all took place in Atlanta. So I'm sure some of you listening have people that may know one of the parties or whatever. But Jennifer is here, by the way, in studio. And your job, you're a producer of reality television, which I find super interesting because this dude married the wrong girl. Because you get a, number one podcast out of it. You're about to have a series or a show on Hulu. It's not a series, right? Just one?
A docu-series. It's a 3-part.
Oh, a 3 parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he married the wrong girl. But I think yay for you for, somehow finding a way to get this out creatively, because a lot of people don't have that avenue to do it.
Well, yeah, it's like a songwriter. They write songs about things that happen in their lives. And this was a way for me to kind of write my story in a way that would hopefully help other people, because a lot of times you feel so alone. And so when you hear something like this, it just tells you, oh wow, this is happening to other people as well.
And he's out of jail, right?
Correct.
Does that freak you out?
No, I think in the beginning when I found out that he was getting out, I was a little nervous, just because, with him being in there for 4 years, there was the safety net around me. And then when he got out, that was gone. But he's so far away that I'm not worried.
So what was your first red flag in all of this?
Yeah.
When I came home and there was a search warrant in my house.
Wait, in it, just sitting? What do you mean in it?
The police had come. We weren't home. They had come to our house with a search warrant to get computer and, things like that. So they
left it?
They busted down our front door.
No way.
And left a search warrant.
And gathered everything that was on the search warrant, left it there. And then I happened to come home. My ex-husband was there, sitting there with the search warrant.
Oh, wow.
And what did you do? What did you say?
It was one of those, it was the last thing that I ever thought that I would hear, that he had sexually assaulted a young girl.
But he was also having sex with other women just as they came, right? No pun intended. I mean, he was just taking it where he could get it.
2 days later, I found evidence of probably, dozens and dozens of other women that he was communicating with.
Ugh. Okay.
Did you find stuff on his phone?
I found stuff on his computer everywhere. I did a deep dive. I bet it took me 9 months just to find everything that I could.
I have some clips I want to play for you where you confront him in jail, and when he's in jail via the phone, which just meeting you, talking to you regularly and listening to those clips, I can hear the fear in your voice and the anger.
Yeah.
So these are actual calls from Betrayal, which, by the way, you can get wherever you get podcasts. I know you're in your second season. We'll have to come back another day for that story. But the first season is all about Jennifer's story, Betrayal. Is it Betrayal, and then what's after it? The Perfect Husband?
The podcast is called Betrayal, and the Hulu series is called Betrayal, the Perfect Husband.
Got it. Okay, here's a clip. Let's get into this is about a minute long. This is Jen talking to Spencer while he's in jail, and just listen to his voice and how he's so unaffected by, in my opinion, about what's happening. Let's listen.
I just wanted to see if he'd be willing to answer some questions.
Well, it's the realization, okay, since I know you're going through with it.
When he says it, he is referring to this project, the podcast, what you're listening to right now.
The realization of it not being over for me. And it's hard enough trying to imagine the difficulties I'm going to face anyway. And then this seems just like another layer of it. And that freaks me out.
Essentially, Spencer is concerned that making more people aware of his story will make post-prison life more difficult for him.
But I can't obviously keep you from doing what you need to do to feel better for yourself.
Yeah. I know I keep getting back to this, but I'm just so curious as to, what you think about that life you were living.
The main thing I can say is that it had gotten so out of control that it was, I don't want to say living a life of its own, because obviously I was in control of it, but it had taken on a dominance in my life that I didn't see coming.
Sounds like he has absolutely no remorse whatsoever. He's more worried about what damage you're going to do by having a show, a podcast, whatever, telling your story.
It's unreal.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's what I hear. I hear no empathy. I hear it's everybody else's fault.
That is so weird.
Let me ask you a question, because I was reading a little bit about him. I guess he worked at this school for 16 years and was one year he was like teacher of the year, which is shocking. At no point in your marriage, because you were together 7 years, did you see any, I know I asked you this earlier, but any red flags with him, with his personality, anything he said,
disappearing,
anything he was hiding? Yes,
yeah.
Nothing, right?
I am telling you, I have gone back through my mind and tried to find any little ounce. And I couldn't find one red flag. He was so present with me. But I think that's also just, it shows how good he was.
Right.
How good he was. Yeah.
How good he was. We have to break. We'll be back with Jennifer Faison, who has Betrayal on Hulu. And I'll leave you just with another clip. I have so many clips, I don't know which one this is, but this is something to do with the story. This is, I believe, you talking to someone about his trophy case or his, We'll be back with Jennifer after a break.
I call it his trophy case. It was an entire catalog of emails and correspondence with women, years and years and years.
I think I found at least 80 different women that he was corresponding with in some way over the 7 years that we were together.
So Jennifer confronted Spencer.
This is a direct pay call from an inmate at the Cherokee County Jail, Georgia.
The Morning X with Barnes and Leslie. 99X.
99X, Barnes and Leslie. We are your Morning X. We're right inside some true crime. Jennifer Faison is here. She has Betrayal, The Perfect Husband on Hulu. Also Betrayal, the podcast, which is a story about her life. And if you missed the first segment, go to the podcast later and catch up because it's an unbelievable story. And one that I think, there's probably people, Jennifer, listening right now whose spouse is up to something.
Yeah, driving here to the interview, my mom and I were talking about that. And that was one of the questions she said. Have you, in going through all of this, realized or found out that this happens a lot more frequently than people know? And maybe not to this extreme that my ex-husband, but I think it does happen in marriages a lot more than people let on even. It's a topic I think that gets swept under the rug because there's so much shame around it.
Is there a restraining order? Like, can he not contact you in any way, or is there anything like that?
No, I'm technically not the victim.
Okay.
So the student has that restraining order.
So there's just the one student?
Correct.
But there's a whole bunch of other women?
Correct.
I'm kind of surprised there were no other students that came forward because I also read that he would create these fake papers for these unsanctioned field trips to lure students out of the campus and then assault them. So has anybody else come forward that you know of that have pressed charges against him?
Press charges, no. I think the statute of limitations is up. I think it's only 3 to 5 years in Georgia, which gives you no time at all, to be able to say, wait a second, this happened to me. To answer your question, though, we have had other students come forward and talk about at least inappropriate behavior, and that's some of the stuff that you'll hear in the docuseries.
That's on Hulu, by the way, Betrayal, The Perfect Husband. Here's another clip where Jen was talking to Spencer from jail. And again, in his voice, there's just no remorse. There's no empathy. For me, that's what I'm hearing. Here's another quick clip, and then we shall discuss.
A few years earlier in his letters, like the ones we heard in episode 7, Spencer seemed to deny culpability by saying women just made themselves available to him. Had time changed the story?
In one of the letters that you wrote me, you said that you never sought after it. Do you still feel that way?
Well, yes. I have to answer this in two ways. Yes, meaning that I was never on a long path that I chose to seek it out. It's just an opportunity would present itself, and then before I knew it, I was pursuing it.
Who says that? No, I wasn't trying to get any action, but, it just came to me.
60, 80 women just came on to him. Yes.
But you did. He was never like missing in the middle of the night. Or when would he do these things?
I'm telling you, and I know it's such an unbelievable part of the story, but there were no red flags. He was so present daily. He was home right after work, and
this is an uncomfortable question, but I need to ask it. Did you have a normal sex life?
We did.
So
we did.
You didn't think anything like, oh, something weird's going on because he doesn't want to be with me.
No,
he didn't want her to know, basically.
Yeah. It was almost like he was, I was the wife and put in kind of this category where, he treated me respectfully in a way. And then there was this other side of him, this deviant side.
This is someone who could have spent life in prison, honestly, if more people had come forward. Honestly, how has this hurt you in future relationships as far as trusting?
I really feel this way. I'm not just saying it, but I believe that I met the one sociopath in my life, and I don't think I'll meet another one. I'm hoping I will just meet a normal person and can go on trusting just like you should be able to.
He doesn't sound like a person who will probably get out of jail when he got out of jail and ran to get help. He sounds like he does not think he has a problem. He just got caught.
And that's my biggest issue with it. Again, another reason to put the story out, not just to help others, but to kind of show how serious this issue is. This isn't just, I'm going to stop now that I got caught.
Mm-hmm.
Man, how is the show going to be told on Hulu? How is the story going to be told in the 3-piece series?
I think what's going to be really different and interesting about the docuseries is all of the visuals that you get to see. You see us back in college together.
For real, or this is enacted?
No, this is like real video.
Oh, wow.
And we've got our wedding video, and
he didn't have to sign off on any of that?
No.
Really? That surprises me just because there were two parties, involved. When you say we.
Right. I think partly because it's public record.
Oh, right. That's interesting. So, so this is not told. Is this you? I haven't watched it yet. Is this you telling the story with supplemented clips, or?
Yes. So I'm telling a lot of the story, plus we have interviews with people who were friends with him. We have an interview with one of the women he had an affair with. My parents talk about it. And then there are some reenactments as well.
How odd is it for you, because couples have friends together? Are you still friends with those people that you were all friends with?
Yeah, when this happened, I really had the support of everybody, because everybody was just as shocked as I was. So it was like we all came together to mourn the loss of this person that we all thought we knew and was so amazing.
Did he ever ask for your forgiveness?
He did in his letters. I don't know that I ever really, really believed it, though.
It just sounds so. I've got to rush. I mean, this is just out on Hulu. Betrayal. This is Jennifer Faison. I want to play another clip from jail. And we talk about, thinking about victims. And I don't feel like he thinks there are any victims.
Correct.
Besides him. Like that he's his tone is interesting. Let's go back to the jail call.
I look at what you were doing our entire marriage from before and every single day of our marriage. You looked me in the eye and lied to me. There are probably days, and I hope to God not many, where you ended up having to sleep with me and another woman on the same day. You brought women into our home.
Your sense of betrayal is not a sense at all. It is a very real thing. I would expect you to deal with it no differently.
But do you not see an issue that might need some work? You got to the point where you were breaking the law, not to mention the disgustingness of it. Do you ever think about the victim?
Yeah, of course. I'm sure that's why I'm still here.
He goes with it. Yes, of course. And then beat. That's probably why I'm still here.
I mean, no remorse at all.
What? Wow.
And then he says, I just want everybody to move on with their life.
Oh, well, that's convenient for
right?
you.
Just snap your fingers.
Hey,
and
everyone. All right. Nothing more to see here. Let's just carry on.
Terrible, terrible.
Well, too bad for him that you're a producer of television and you now have a thing on Hulu that's going to show it even more. Wow.
Well, I got to use my talents, you know.
100% agree. He picked the wrong person to screw around on. But I hope the victim, when I say the victim, the girl that was 16, I hope that she has recovered. Do you have any contact with her?
Every once in a while we do. You know,
is she okay?
I think she is a survivor. I think she is strong. I think she sought out help, and I hope that her coming forward also gave her some strength in this.
And you coming forward and telling this story, honestly, Jennifer, for being so brave, is really going to help a lot of people.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Leslie.
Wow. Well, I number one, how many people are going to be checking on that spouse today? Hey, what's going on? You know, I mean, just because these stories, if you hadn't caught on or if that one little thing hadn't triggered everything, it could still be going on.
Oh, absolutely. Had the victim not come forward.
Right.
You know, or let's say the judge had let us bond him out of jail. I might not have found out all the rest of the stuff.
No.
It's just
awful.
Yeah.
Well, Betrayal is wherever you get podcasts. I highly recommend it. Season 1 is about this story, and there's a new season that's just come out. And check it out on Hulu, Betrayal, The Perfect Husband. Jennifer Faison, thank you very much for coming in. And I know you've been telling it for a while, but I appreciate you sharing and kind of getting into it with us.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
The Morning X with Barnes and Leslie. 99X.